Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Player 2 podcast. I'm your co-host, Rade and Dave.
And I am your co-host, Dave Leary. Roddy, it is nice to be back with you again. We record these a few days in advance of when they actually go live. So yesterday was St. Patrick's Day. I see we're both wearing some sort of shade of green, though yours is maybe like a little bit grayish green.
So I have a young daughter, and she told me, hey, wear green or I'm going to pinch you. And so everyone in the house wore green, except the dog, who was absolved of that. But she changes into her pajamas last night before bed. So I pinched her, and she just looked at me and then just got a mad look on her face and kicked me in the shin. So my wife found that hilarious.
I would say deserved. It seems deserved. Probably. But it was a good attempt at comedy.
She does not put up with my nonsense, which is great. That's definitely my kid. All right, man. A lot of stuff going on this week. It's pretty newsworthy in a funny way. And so let me just share with everybody kind of like my frame of mind before I get into this. A buddy of mine on Discord just shared this trial going on about this guy named Afroman. And I asked you if you know who it is, and you did. So this is a gentleman, and I believe it's in Ohio, that's currently in a trial. He's being sued by the police because they wrongfully kicked in his door and came into his house thinking there was a kidnapping there. They really just made a mistake and everything. And so he took the security camera video and made this excellent music video, where he rapped and sung about lemon pound cake because one of the officers kept staring at this lemon pound cake on his countertop. And now the officers are suing him for emotional distress and damages for the whole thing. And man, like it is just funny and worth a watch. So if you haven't looked it up, look up Afroman lemon pound cake.
I will second that recommendation. The Afroman story has been funny for at least a year or so. It continues to be funny with the ongoing kind of goofy lawsuit. But I believe there's some other lawsuit related news in our news today that is game industry related.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to share my frame of mind because I find this next one particularly funny. So a couple of episodes ago, we talked about Krafton and the Subnautica lawsuit and how it's like, and this was just really weird. It didn't make a lot of sense. We figured, I think we suggested, it's like, watch what's going to come out in trial. And oh boy, did some choice stuff come out in trial. David, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you and I were both a little suspicious of Krafton's assertion that they had done nothing wrong, but we really didn't have enough facts yet. And now there's a pretty extensive court document from the judge, which I have read actually all of because it was a compelling read all the way through. And I strongly suggest that everyone read it because it's extra spicy. But the gist is that Krafton was pretty clearly trying to do the folks at the Subnautica devs poorly here, possibly in the interest of saving themselves money, possibly in the interests of just saving the face of the CEO. And the end result is kind of surprising. They're talking about putting one of the three people that Krafton was pushing out back in charge as CEO. I'm not sure how that works practically. They are going to have complete control over their early access launch, and it sounds like the judge is planning to keep a pretty close eye on this. Maybe the juiciest revelation from this was that the CEO of Krafton had used ChatGPT a few times to develop a strategy for dealing with unknown worlds. And not only that, but had then used ChatGPT to develop a strategy for how to take the company away from them, basically.
So just to get this straight, the CEO of Krafton asked ChatGPT how to screw over one of his developers.
That's right. That's boiling it right down. And, we are a couple days away from when this posts, as I mentioned, but I am not going to be surprised if the CEO of Krafton does not survive this and may not survive it very long. This is, a documented court case where he ends up looking really bad, and the end result for Krafton is not a good one.
So, look, this isn't the first time there have been lawsuits about publishers trying to screw over developers. I think one of the biggest ones was that $600 million lawsuit that Jason West and Vin Sampella from Infinity Ward made against Activision for not paying bonuses. They won that one. But we've also seen a bunch of other these. They usually settle. They don't make it to trial, so you don't get all these juicy details. Man, it's got to be it's not got to be. It is a bad look for a publisher. Like, I can't imagine any developer looking at that saying, hey, you know what? I want to sign up with those guys. after something like this happens.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Krafton's board coming off their relatively successful IPO recently, I think that you have to be looking at your CEO now, saying, "Is this the guy we want to run the show for the next couple of years?" And if they want to get their reputation back, how this situation is managed is probably going to play a role.
I really, really don't like when developers who've earned what they've made don't get paid. It just really, really irks me. And like, there's, in a successful title, there's enough money to go around. Somebody like this is probably their first big hit, though not necessarily in the case of this particular developer. They performed. They did what they were supposed to do, and then some. Pay them. You've got the contract. It's an agreement. Like, it's just nobody wins here.
It should be that simple. I think the gist of it is that Krafton was looking at numbers and figuring they were going to end up losing money on this deal they had signed, which, that's really kind of their fault for signing the deal in the first place. I do think, ironically, this puts some additional pressure on the Subnautica 2 launch and maybe creates some expectations. The assertion from the Subnautica developers is our game was ready. It's in great shape. Krafton's fears were unwarranted. Certainly some of the court documents and the conversations that they were having with ChatGPT on the Krafton side seem to bear that out. However, if the game underperforms or isn't very good or launches into early access in a subpar state, that's probably going to reopen this wound again, and people are going to be talking about it once more.
Look, that's true. Let's hope it's a good game. I like the first one. I hope the next one's great. Would love to play it. Like, there's an interesting other angle to this, and that's just really the safety and privacy of using AI for advice for things like this. I think we've seen examples of sketchy lawyers using AI in some of their court filings and judges calling them out because it will cite precedent for cases that don't exist. And people have been sanctioned. And I think a few of them have been disbarred for doing that. Seeing as we're not lawyers, I think it's really something that would behoove developers, especially indie developers. Don't use an AI for legal advice. Like, there's no attorney-client privilege. It's not a lawyer. You're going to get in trouble, even if you're above board and you're not trying to do sketchy stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And it's kind of ironic because I will give Krafton credit on this front. Last year they made a pretty big deal about how they were going to be an AI first company and they were expecting all their employees to use AI tools in their work. And hey, I guess the CEO abided by that and he used an AI tool in his work. I don't think he used the right one or used it very well. And you're absolutely correct. He should have talked to an actual lawyer rather than an AI. But, they put their money where their mouth is in this case.
And people get this all wrong a lot. Like, I've seen email threads where somebody invoked attorney-client privilege just by adding a lawyer on the thread, but they didn't ask the lawyer any question. I'm like, that's not attorney-client privilege. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that won't cover you in a discovery case for sure.
Yeah. So I think, other lesson for younger developers or newer developers getting into it, just like spend the money on a decent lawyer. Like, it doesn't have to be a fortune. It's going to seem like an expense you could get away with. Just don't. Like, it'll pay off in the long run. And even if it doesn't, like, you just never know what's going to happen, especially if you're successful and you become what's known as a rich target.
And I'll add one more note here. We had a lot of fairly grim news last week, and as kind of gossipy and ugly as the story is, I see it as kind of a happy one because there's some justice in this case. The Subnautica developers are definitely going to get paid now, and I think that we should be happy there was a little justice in this case because I imagine there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that goes on like this that never comes to light.
For sure. And so it's like, this is, I think, a good thing for the development community. Speaking about juicy gossip and stuff this week, man, we got another CEO that really kind of stepped into it. We're talking about the CEO of NVIDIA with their latest update for the DLSS AI that's going on. And if you haven't seen the memes that are floating around on this, man, there's some choice work being done there.
I have a little more sympathy for this CEO. I do think that there is some interesting applications for this tech down the road. I think the rollout was mishandled a bit. We could talk about what this is, but the perception among a lot of people was, hey, this is a glorified AI filter. Why should I be excited about this? I think that's kind of underselling what the tech can do, as I understand it. But I do think the rollout was kind of bungled.
Yeah. So, just to be clear, we're talking about Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA. I have nothing against the guy. I like their products. I use their products. This was an absolute self-made blunder. There was just a lot of negative pushback from the DLSS stuff. And I'll get into the technical stuff on why I actually think that the technology is useful. But he comes out after the negative stuff and says, no, they're all completely wrong. And then goes on and to say, as I've said before, I'm like, look, if there's one thing you take away in any kind of public speaking or engagement with the community, do not tell your customers they are wrong. Like, it never works out. It doesn't matter if they're blatantly wrong, obviously wrong. Like, you've got video proof of it. It just don't do it. Like, I can't believe a CEO of a company that big would do that.
Yeah, I think that was a misstep. And then the other misstep I would call out is that some of the examples they chose to highlight how this tech worked really started to feel like they were messing with the art style. I think what's there works pretty well with something like Starfield, where the character models started out in that kind of oblivion potato face place, so they didn't have a strong art direction. When you look at the Starfield examples, it actually is a improvement in my assessment. But some of the other ones, notably the Resident Evil character and a couple others, really did more than I think the creators would have wanted with it. It not only changed the look, but it changed the look in a way that was not really aligned with the original artistic vision of the art direction on the projects. And I think that's what people aren't getting yet, is that this tech apparently can be taken into a project and used in a whole variety of ways. And these were just examples, but some of the examples they chose weren't very good.
No, they weren't. So I was talking to my wife about this. She used to do public relations or comms in the games business, and she worked on some really, really big, well-known titles. Like didn't tell her I was going to do this, so I don't want to name drop what she worked on. But those of you that know me know what my wife has worked on. And I said, man, it was a real fail of the PR department for NVIDIA to let this through. And she said something I hadn't thought of before. It's like, oh, they probably did, but the CEO just didn't listen. And she reminded me that's why she got out of games PR, specifically because she had a bunch of stuff like that happen where she's like, no, you can't do this. This is what the story is going to be, blah, 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 blah. And then they just ignored her. And then it happened. And then she got blamed for it. And she's like, man, I don't need this. And so she switched careers.
Yeah, tough being the PR guy at either Krafton or NVIDIA this week, I think.
Yeah, I think the Krafton person, like you go, when that happens, you hire professional crisis PR and hope they could get you out of it, though. I don't think there's any getting out of that one. So back to the tech for a minute. This is a form of is neural rendering. And like there's some really compelling cases for this, and 100% agree with what you said about the examples being poor. But why I think it's useful, right? So this is different than generative AI. Just to create something from nothing, you can't go from prompt to this. This is more akin, if you haven't looked at the technology, to a very advanced filter. And we were looking at it at a previous company I was working at because it's a way to get very, very high quality output for a fraction of the power of traditional raster rendering. And so, for example, you look at something like a high-end NVIDIA card, you're pushing 2, 3, 4, 100 watts of power to output your graphics with that, which is not insignificant. Like, it means you're never going to get that kind of look on a battery powered device. Like, your battery would be huge. In the case of a VR headset, like even if you could plug it in to put that kind of heat on your face, you'd melt your face. Like, it would be terrible. But with this neural net rendering, you can get comparable quality for like 100th of the power draw on that. And that's really compelling for a bunch of different devices, and also just, good for your power bill. Electricity is not getting any cheaper. The challenge with it is, from what I've seen of the tech and what I've used of the tech, you can never get 100% accurately what the artist designed to show up on the pixels on the screen. But you could get really, really close. And that means integrating it into your rendering pipeline and doing a completely different rendering pipeline. And so all of the intent of what the original artist wanted is in the final image. It doesn't do anything beyond that. You do this with a bunch of different constraints and how it's used. That's not what NVIDIA showed. They were looking at it as look, this is just a thing you could slap onto it. Now, they talked about some of the other stuff, but they didn't show that. And I think had they gone there, it would have been a big difference. And so, example I might give you on something like that is kind of getting that last mile on photorealism is really, really expensive and difficult. And I would argue that you probably don't need it for a game, but you can get to 80 or 90% there and then push the last bit using DLSS technology to really improve the look of the product, if that's what you want stylistically for your game. The challenge is if you rendered two identical gameplay clips back to back to back to back and looked at them frame by frame, you'd see tiny little subtle differences. But if you step back a little bit, they don't look any different. And so that's the trade-off with a tech like this.
And that's some of what you and I have been talking about for the last few weeks is this constant quest for higher and higher visual fidelity is certainly driving some of this. And I certainly think that for those studios that want to use this tech, they'll find uses for it once they get their hands on it that will make their games look better. And so there's some value here. I'm not going to say that there isn't.
No, I think the cool thing is you could potentially with this tech take a Steam Deck or a Switch 2 if it had the right chip in it. They don't currently, but using this thing, you could have your handheld experience and then dock it or just wirelessly stream to your large screen gaming monitor or television and have high-end PC or high-end console graphics without doing anything extra. So like that's pretty compelling. I think the purists would argue is like, well, it's not, 200 frame per second, 200 hertz rendering for my shooter. And like, that's fine. Like it's not that, it's not trying to do that. But for everyone else, like, man, that'd be pretty cool. One less device in my house.
For sure. Would you agree with my sort of gut feel assertion that a strong art direction on a product is going to make this tech more useful? If there's a strong human hand at the wheel, that it is kind of got some very clearly defined looks that they want, that's going to help when they apply this tech?
Yeah, 100%. And so like this has been true for a long time, is a really good art director or very strong art direction is better than pushing high-end graphics all day, anytime. It just brings the whole experience together. It feels cohesive. It feels original. It just feels quality. I think we saw examples of that. I did one a long time ago when Epic released one of their first products using Unreal Engine on mobile. I showed side-by-side screenshots of Infinity Blade and the God of War game at the time. Infinity Blade on iOS, God of War next to it. And you could look at it and tell, oh yeah, that's, one has higher compute, like it's just better graphics overall. But you start showing it to a casual person and they start to not tell the difference. They say, oh, they both look fantastic. Are those both console? I'm like, no, that one's mobile. And they'd be like, no way. They just had very, very good art direction.
Well, we have run our news segment extra long this week, but I can't let us leave without giving you some props for your prescient prediction. I assume you have seen that the state of Arizona has charged Kalshi with operating an illegal gambling business.
Yeah, I put $100 on that happening on the Poly Market before
good
the end of the month. So
smart moves.
There you go. Yeah.
But this is definitely related to your rant, your much justified rant a week or two ago.
Yeah, I did not place that bet. I don't mess around with that. Yeah, I mean, look, it's unregulated. It's crazy. The laws governing that are the futures and commodity trading laws that are designed for soybeans and crops. If you ever watch Trading Places, frozen concentrated orange juice. They just weren't meant to do this. And so like, there's just all sorts of issues. There's like athletes cheating doing this. There's insider stuff going on with the government on this right now, which is completely bizarre. So like, I think this is the tip of the iceberg of what's going to come out of these prediction markets. There's going to be, hopefully somebody did something stupid and asked ChatGPT how to cheat on one of these things and we get another good story out of this, but that wouldn't surprise me.
Let us hope.
Yeah. So, overall, I was thinking about coming out of GDC. We talked about this a little bit in the last episode. To me, it feels like the games industry is being reborn. A lot of the old is starting to go away. Like we're seeing some of the old publishers just not being as relevant anymore. Like, EA is going to do what EA does now. They're private equity. They've got their sort of evergreen businesses. I think those are going to keep on going, but like you're probably not going to see a bunch of brand new stuff coming out of there. Ubisoft, I don't know where they're going to end up, but we've talked about their challenges before. I don't know what Microsoft's doing, but like we'll see what happens with that one. But even beyond that, a lot of the things we used to do just don't work as well as before. And we're starting to see developers and publishers change how they're doing things. And they realize we're now in an attention-based economy, and they're building products with that in mind. And I don't mean they're just putting out slop or anything like that. I think great products are coming out, but just the whole approach and the speed at which things are moving has just really changed. And I think that's a good thing. I think that gets us out of the doldrums that we've been in.
Me too. And certainly there is a vibrant indie scene going on right now. I mean, I think I can think about the games I've played over the last year, and a lot of them have been small indie projects. I will suggest to you, I guess, that I think there are some big companies that are still going to do quite well, even in this Rebirth era. I can't imagine CD Projekt Red and Rockstar stumbling. I particularly think CD Projekt Red learned a lot from their Cyberpunk launch. I'm anticipating Larian's new game will be a huge success when it comes out. And even Microsoft, you say you're not sure what they're doing next, but I mean, they've got some IPs that are pretty evergreen. I'm thinking about the next Elder Scrolls game, Fallout, Doom, Quake, if they wanted to leverage those again. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there that they could do if the new organization wanted to invest in games and mix things up a little bit.
Yeah, I was specifically referring to Helix, their new console. It's like, you're going to go up against Valve and the PC and everything. Like, why? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. They definitely have the products between Bethesda and a lot of the other IP that they own. It's a weird strategy. The way I see it ending up is they part out most of their games business and sell it.
Do you think that it's fair to assume that Steam will continue to dominate the PC space going forward into the new era?
I mean, nobody has been able to dislodge that. I'm not sure why you would move off of it. Like, you'd have to, like, the free stuff that Epic was giving on their store got people to pop over there, and they went right back to Steam. Like, you got to offer something for people to switch. And like, we've seen this before, like, if your gaming community is in one spot, you just don't leave.
I mean, as a hobbyist and a pretty hardcore gamer, I will confess I have hopped over to the GOG now and then because I like some old stuff and I want it DRM free if I can get it that way. I like the fact that I can get stuff off GOG and not have to worry about the service ever going away because it's just a downloaded copy. I do think that is a very kind of esoteric, not mass market choice I'm making, though, and certainly Steam is where I spend the majority of my time.
What I think it would take to dethrone Steam would be, number one, nothing that's been affecting the other app stores with regards to the store fee, the 30% fee, applies to Steam. So that makes them an expensive place to be. They do nothing to materially improve discovery for the smaller apps, which so far they have not done anything to help that. And I'm not sure that they will, and I'm not even sure they can do anything. If those two things hold true, I could very much see a group of developers getting together and saying, hey, you know what? We could throw our rock into this ocean and hope that the ripples amplify and we get some big traction there. Or we could go over to someplace else, maybe form their own little thing. And you start to see some fragmentation that way. It could make a lot of sense. Like, with something like that, your odds of being successful as a smaller dev could go up 10, 100,000 fold. And like, man, that's pretty attractive, especially if you don't need all the features Steam offers. You're not going to get the reach that they offer with their huge install base. I could see that happening.
Yeah, I feel like if it's coming, it's a long way off, but there is a scenario, I suppose.
Well, you could just vibe code a store. I mean, come on.
So we can't talk about the rebirth of the game industry without kind of talking a little bit about mobile, I think. Mobile continues to be a pretty major ecosystem off to the side of the types of games that I usually play, but with some huge successes in that space. And, it evolves quickly. I think those developers on the mobile side have clearly embraced AI more heavily than the PC and console side. So where do you see mobile going in the next year or so?
Man, so the stores, if you look at the top list, they've been sticky. It's been really hard to see new entrants get in there and move. And we see a lot of somebody will come up with a small sort of game with a new mechanic. Next thing you know, you'll see 20 or 30 knockoffs. And it's bad enough that you'll get ads for these things. It's like, oh, you played that game and it didn't work. You must have downloaded one of those scam games. Ours is the real one. I'm like, and if you have to advertise that you're not a scam, like that's not a good thing. I'm pretty sure it was a scam anyway. This was some sort of solitaire game where someone's going to pay for their groceries and they're like, oh no, my wallet's empty. And someone's like, play this game. And they play one solitaire match and they get $20. I'm like, why would anyone ever give you $20 for that? Like, what the heck is this nonsense? So I think that's a bit of a problem getting into that. But why I don't think it goes away, it gets worked out, is mobile's ubiquitous. Like everybody has a smartphone. I really lament that there's just nothing beyond, for the most part, time wasters that chart. I'm really sick about the mechanics. Like I've built enough of these things. I've played enough of them. Like I'm sitting there and I'll play something. And I'm like, oh, here comes the power curve cliff. I'm going to have to pony up $10 to do anything after this point. Oh, there it is. And then I just shelve the thing because I know they're going to try to bleed me dry.
Though, as you say, you are somebody who has seen an awful lot of that stuff and spent your career partly in it. So I don't know that the average customer is feeling that quite as intensely as you are.
Well, I mean, they sure, for sure, can feel that they're getting nickel and dimed and that they're not getting value. And you could see, if you look at any of these things, you can see a pretty pronounced drop off in the funnel where the monetization really starts to grip hard, where the developer has decided, look, you've played enough. You either give us money or we don't want you. And it exists to some degree. You know, if it's really, really light, that means you're fodder for the people that are playing, usually in your combat or war games. If it's really aggressive, that doesn't exist. And they're just like, I don't want to waste server costs on you if you're not giving me money, or the ad revenue is down and they can't monetize that way. I think it kind of gets back to something we talked about before. Like we just really need to provide customers with value.
100%. And I think, we've talked a lot about how PC indie games are doing that. There's certainly some mobile games that the people feel are providing them value and they want to check in on every day. I think there'll be a few big budget console and PC games that continue to do that. I'm curious for another vector we haven't talked about and your opinion on it. I feel like we can't talk about the rebirth of the game industry without talking about things like Roblox and products as platforms. The line between engines like Unity and Unreal and something like Roblox is getting a little more fuzzy. I think that my distaste for that space has always been the dangers of exploitation. Roblox is generating a metric ton of revenue, but there aren't a lot of creators getting rich. A lot of it's going up the pyramid, as it were. But I think that space is going to continue to be a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. The big appeal there is what we were talking about before with regards to speed and attention. If you're growing up in the attention economy with social media and TikTok, and you've seen that, and you have access to all the entertainment that you want at your fingertips whenever you want, and it's cheap, you're used to, if something doesn't pop with you, just moving on to the next thing very, very quickly with almost no switching costs or no switching costs. And Roblox provides that in spades. Like, don't like the thing you just tried? Boom, done. Try something else. There's a new thing, multiple new things a day. Something is going to work for you. And like, that's the appeal.
So what's the takeaway in this conversation? For me, I think it is that the game industry is going to be as strong, if not stronger, than it ever has been. I think it continues to be a very important place, but it's going to look different as it kind of goes through these thrashings and gets reborn. And the products that we have out there are going to be different. I think those that want a niche will find games that fit their niche and make them happy. There's got to be a lot of new stuff coming down the pike, and I don't think you and I are fully able to predict what those things will be.
I don't think anyone can predict that. Like, the one thing I will say is, like, the notion, and you alluded to this before when you talked about Baldur's Gate and Larian and GTA, is like, games like that aren't going to go away. They're going to come out and they're going to be successful. I think we've already seen fewer of them, and I think we're going to continue to see a winnowing of that and fewer. If there's one takeaway I've got, is that everybody needs to optimize for speed. Get product out there, see what's working, double down on what's working, drop whatever's not, and move on to the next thing. And so I think we're going to see, what excites me about that is that when you do stuff like that, generally leads to a lot more creativity and new types of things, because you're just getting iteration cycles. And like, I'm excited to see what comes out of that.
It will be exciting, and definitely things are moving faster than ever. So maybe that's the takeaway to everyone is be prepared to move faster than ever.
Yeah, move fast, uncomfortably fast. Yeah, if I think I was advising some other people, it's like if you're uncomfortable when you're shipping, it's too late. You should be terrified that you're shipping too soon. All right, so we should talk about our game of the week. This one is one that's coming out.
Yeah, so this is crazy, right? We're going to talk for just a minute, I think, about a game that is not out yet, but is about to be out. And so neither you nor I has played it. I believe that at the time we record this, the review embargo, the 24-hour review embargo is about to lift, but it is highly anticipated, and it is Crimson Desert. So this is sort of a game of next week, I think, because I suspect we might be talking about this in the future, but I am curious for your take on whether you think this will be a successful game.
I think it's going to flame out. I think one of two things is going to happen, possibly both. I think there's enough hype around it early on that it's going to get some attention. I think it's going to reach a ceiling pretty quick because it's trying to do too many things, and it's just confusing to a lot of people. And I think long term, GTA 6 kills this, because if you're going to play one live service big world game this year, you're going to play GTA.
But this isn't really live service, right? I mean, they have doubled down on kind of the somewhere between the Elden Ring and Skyrim space. So yeah, I think if they have a really great launch and they sell, they've already apparently got close to 500,000 pre-orders on Steam alone. I mean, that might be enough, right?
Well, let me put it a different way. It's not a live service in that sense, but in terms of the way it consumes your time, like you only have so many hours of a day to play a game, and these games notoriously suck up a lot of it. GTA is going to take it.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I have had some concerns. Honestly, this game was not really on my radar until about a month ago, and I was kind of unfamiliar with their previous product, sort of what I would have described as a mid-tier MMO, Black Desert Online, and I only called it mid-tier because I think I didn't realize just how much revenue that thing has generated. It's kind of ridiculous if you go look at the numbers they've actually had on that thing. Had concerns about the kitchen sink nature of this design, which I think is something you're alluding to. And I know that kind of everyone's skeptical of, can this really be all things to all people like it claims to be?
The answer is no.
The answer is no. It cannot, but it might be an interesting place to run around in, a playground like a Zelda or an Elden Ring or a Skyrim. I don't think it's going to deliver the kind of narrative from what I've seen that a Witcher 3 does, but I'm not sure they were going for that.
I mean, look, it's $70 with no recognizable IP. That's not going to help.
It is $70 with no recognizable IP. I will be interested to see what the reviewers say about it. It certainly looks like fun when you watch the videos, I think. Maybe not to you.
No, I'm going to play it because I think the idea of having enough stuff to do where you kind of design your own combat style while you're playing it sounds pretty cool. Let's see if they pull it off. It's just like, I look at it. I'm going to sound really shallow when I say this, but I'm going to put on my business and marketing and production hat here. I look at the name, doesn't look that exciting. I look at the key art, just generic dude, nothing special about that, nothing unique. I don't know much about the company. They've been successful before, but if I didn't play that game, I don't know them. I look at the videos on it. It looks really cool, but it also has that look of somebody that's trying to push visual fidelity versus gameplay. And I'm not saying that's the case here, but that's the look. And then I see the price, and man, that's a wait and see for me. And I think most people are going to feel the same way.
Well, I think you and I have a little bit of a different view on this game. And what's interesting is I think by the time this episode airs, we'll start to see one way or the other which way it goes. I'm going to root for its success. I think it's ambitious. I think it's kind of crazy. I hope they pulled off half of what they were aiming for. And it's clearly a direct play for the Western RPG space, which we haven't really seen this direct a challenge from a Korean publisher before. So that's a little interesting to me too. I want to see how they do and what this is going to teach the guys at Bethesda about making Elder Scrolls 6 and so forth.
Hey, so we talked about prediction markets earlier in the podcast, and I dropped a reference to trading places. Shall we make a bet? Say
sure,
$1 American dollar.
But the problem, $1 American dollar is a good number to bet. But what is the bet? Because this is a very kind of mushy space. Like, what does success mean here? I mean, to me, success is 400,000 already sold on Steam and pre-orders. That's pretty good.
I say this falls out of top 3 within 3 weeks from launch.
Okay, falls out of top 3 within 3 weeks.
On Steam.
Ooh, but see, I think they're going to have a huge launch. I'll tell you what, I'll take that bet. But I think you're not giving this enough credit for the crazy spike it's going to have right at the beginning.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. I'll take the bet.
$1. So. All right, 3 weeks from now. All right.
And we will talk about Crimson Desert again, I'm sure, because I'm planning on playing it because it's in my wheelhouse. So.
All right. That's it for another episode, folks. Tune in next week and then a couple weeks after that to see who won the bet. Hit that like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.
Later.